So many questions about May's trip to Beijing. I'm joined now by EU expert and journalist Brian Beary. Brian, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Asieh.
It's a term we keep hearing over and over and over again. The term golden era in relations with China. What does that mean exactly? I know it's a term that goes back some time.
Well, it certainly seemed like a bit of a lovey fest between Prime Minister May and President Xi. They are basically talking a lot about their trade relationship, their investment relationship. They don't have a lot of tricky bilateral disputes right now, and they both have good reason to strengthen their trade relationship.
So, but what does the term golden era refer to? What does that mean? Is that just warming of relations between the two countries and how far they've come?
Yes, they have a warm relationship compared to what it was even 20 or 30 years ago, but driven very much by economic need. And on both sides, Britain is still one of the world's largest economies, soon to be able to negotiate its own trade agreements. And China is a market of 1.3 billion people and will be the first port of call for the UK as it wants to chart its new course.
Brian, how worried do you think China is about a post-Brexit investment in the UK?
About a post-Brexit investment?
Once Britain leaves the European Union.
Well, judging from the way the visit is going, I think it has planned things quite well. China sees no difficulty with the Brexit in the sense that it has quite good relations with the EU and will continue to do so, and is perfectly happy to deal with the 27 EU member states as a bloc for trade purposes, but is also thinking very strategically about the future and the fact that a bilateral trade agreement with the UK will be possible in about 3 years' time. So it really seemed like a win-win visit for them.
Beyond trade, what does each side, London and Beijing, hope to achieve from this trip?
That they're both players on the world stage. I think for China, it's kind of obvious. For the UK, it's had a bit of a difficult few years. It's both isolated within Europe, and it hasn't really been stepping up to the plate on the great global security issues. Now, that they were not front and center of the visit, but I think for Prime Minister May, who just has this constant squabbling civil war among her colleagues over Brexit and the relationship with Europe, it just must be such a breath of fresh air to go there and appear like a world leader, a true world leader.
And talk about some of these business deals, as we talked about earlier, and our reporter mentioned $9 billion worth of agreements. That's a lot of money.
Yes, I believe 60 billion is the full extent of the UK trade relationship. So it's definitely a big chunk of that. And there's room to grow. I think I've read that 300 million Chinese are learning English. You know, where better to learn it from than the English? And there's these teacher exchange programs, you know, good news stories for her there. There are English students learning Mandarin Chinese. So on the cultural exchange
people-to-people exchanges.
That it was a great success, and there's actually practical need for it, because as the trade and investment relationship grows, needing to know each other's language also becomes more important.
Brian, excuse me for interrupting you, but very quickly, if there was one area these two nations do not see eye to eye, what would it be?
Possibly Hong Kong and the freedom of speech, deterioration in the human rights and freedom of speech standards in Hong Kong, because of course the UK ruled Hong Kong for a century, but they, I believe, had a frank exchange of views, but it really didn't overshadow the visit here.
Agreeing to disagree on some issues.
Right.
Brian Beary, thank you so much.